Hi, my name is Hannah Lavin, and today we'll be summarizing another week's discussion in Dr. Bailey's Individuality and Friendship class. This week, 2 new books were introduced into our class discussion, apart from Aristotle's Other Selves. We were exposed to Mark Vernon's The Meaning of Friendship, as well as a self-help book entitled The Friendship Factor. We began our discussion by taking a look at Vernon's analysis of friendship frameworks. Something that stood out in the text was when he referred to work friends as cheap ambiguities. This provoked Professor Bailey to urge us to look further into what Vernon meant by this. He points out that work people tend to put on a mask that is different than who they are outside of the workplace. After all, many people spend more time with their coworkers during the average 9-to-5 workday than they do with their family members at the end of the night. By donning this so-called mask, we adopt the attitude of pretending to like people who, in all actuality, we might dislike. The relationship between coworkers would be the type of relationship that Aristotle would refer to as a utility friendship, where the two participants feed off of and use each other solely for the purpose of workplace-related results. However, what Aristotle failed to take into consideration was how these work friends would interact if they had an encounter anywhere outside of their jobs. This brings up our discussion of frameworks. As a class, we came to the conclusion that friendships exist within frameworks, and if the relationship is unexpectedly extended outside of these boundaries, it can be very uncomfortable and awkward, something that I'm sure we have all experienced at some point in our lives. So, it can be said that the shifting frameworks of relationships can create different modes of our being. For example, a coach for a sport often shows completely different attitudes and personality tendencies from when he is coaching to when he is at home with his family. One of the students in our class gave the example that their coach was headstrong and almost scary during their practices and games. He would curse, throw things, and scream at his team to no end. However, when the team saw him outside of the sport with his family, it was obvious how nice and caring he was as a person. In this case, the coach's work friends would be his team, and his family a separate framework with an obvious shift in the way he acted between the two. This being said, it makes us wonder how some of the people we know inside a specific framework are in other situations. It is definitely something to think about that you cannot always figure out who someone is from seeing them in only one context. In order to avoid acting differently between each of the many frameworks that we uphold in our day-to-day lives, we must know ourselves in order to not wear the mask around friends of any kind. For Aristotle, utility friendships are fragile. In his book, he believes that these relationships will never blossom into completeness and will automatically dissolve when utility is no longer needed. Here's what he misses. It is not just about time. It is about context and framework. In work, we have one mode. Then we completely shift our framework at 5 o'clock when we return home. Framework shifts, but identity does not. In Thursday's class, we discussed the second book, The Friendship Factor. The topic was getting to know someone better. The question was brought up of why are we not open when we know it is the right thing to do? According to the Friendship Factor, there is a fear of rejection and a desire to appear cool. However, this led into the debate of what it actually means to be cool. Is it to be a trendsetter or to be accepted? There is a tension between the two. Although trendsetting is required to be seen as cool because it is new and fresh, the acceptance is ultimately what makes something cool in our society. But why do we even use the term cool? The connotation of the word relates to a person being relaxed, calm, and having everything together. The only way to achieve coolness, however, is to appear as though that is the exact opposite of what you want to be. But this brings us back to the ultimate question. Why might we wear these masks? From the week's discussion, we can conclude that the answer might be to be known and to remain hidden at the same time. This sums up the summary of the week's class. Thank you for listening.